All right, everyone, welcome to Improve Your User Adoption Capabilities with Real Data. My name is Ville Gallstrand. I'm a number ninja. I'm a data platform MVP and a fast-track recognized solution architect. Now you can reach me on Twitter at VilleSikiViking, or you can go into my blog at villesikiviking.com and we'll find all kinds of hopefully inspirational stuff regarding Power BI. But this story doesn't really begin with Power BI or any blog or anything like that. This story begins with you guys creating the adoption strategy for your global rollout of Microsoft Teams, and all the pieces are coming together. Now, perhaps you're even a little bit proud of all the good things that this will bring to your organization. Now, you've planned this for a long time, and it is time for the rollout to begin. And to your surprise, the users kind of just complain about this new solution that is called Microsoft Teams. And you're like, what? You can't believe this. Microsoft Teams, it comes with all this greatness, right? It comes with all these great features and capabilities. And how come they don't see it? Now, to understand why they don't really see it, we need to take a small step back and look at something called the learning curve. And it actually is right here on a straight, my hand is almost showing, on a straight line. Because you are super disciplined, it's just a straight line where you learn linearly more over time. First, you will learn about chat and concepts of Microsoft Teams, like what is it and how do you chat with other people. And then after a while, you will learn about the activity feed and what you can find there, how you can find your way back into conversations, or when you are at mentioned, for example. You might learn about file and collaborations. And after a while, you learn about meetings, you'll learn about apps, you will learn about shifts and lists, and finally, maybe you will learn about Power Apps and Power Automate with Teams. So all these things that you've now come across and learned, now you know how to automate it and build upon this, right? So you start to realize that this Teams thing is really something awesome, right? Now, the issue is that by the time it starts to roll out Teams, you have spent a lot of time learning all these things. Now, you're quite high on this learning curve, right? Some of your users, they're not. So let's imagine there's a timeline, something like this. And a lot of time has passed since you started looking into this. Now it's time for the rollout and your users are down here. So there's, let's just say it's a bit of a gap, right? And these are the people down here. These are the people you start to hear complaints about because they don't really see what Teams is all about. They just like now learn about chat and concepts of Teams. And there is a bit of a gap. And we're not going to talk about this gap because this is one of the gap between you and the lowest user. We are actually going to talk about another gap because you see, all your users aren't all down here. These are just the ones you hear the worst complaints from. Your users are actually spread out all across a large spectrum on the learning axis, and some are most likely even more knowledgeable than you are. I mean, after all, Teams has been around for quite some time now, and let's say maybe you just hired a power user, someone who worked at another company and really utilized a lot of features within Teams. They are already way above. And so this is the gap we will focus on today. You have a lot of users and a lot of needs to be met. So how do we do it? Let's just say that, in the beginning, there's nothing. And you don't really have to guess like you would have done if this was an on-premise solution. This is the cloud. So let's imagine it like this. First, there's nothing. But then I tell you that Microsoft Teams, it actually produces loads of usage data. Now, you can probably get an idea of what that looks like, and an image becomes visible but blurry in your head. So you have an idea, there's usage data, nice. Now, the next step is to look into what kind of data are we actually talking about here, and what does this look like, right? And to get started, we're going to need something called a role in Azure Active Directory. It's called the reports reader role. Because with this role, with this admin access, you actually have the right to look into the Microsoft 365 usage data and see what people are doing right? So you need this role either permanently or using, in my case, privileged identity management, so I can only activate it when I need to go in and look at reports. Now, with this role activated, you can head into the admin center of Office 365, and on the left side, you should find reports, under which you will find both security and compliance, usage, and productivity score. We are not going to focus on, I can't really point. We're not going to focus on the productivity score just yet. I'm going to touch that later, and we're not going to go into security and compliance at all. We're going to focus on usage in this case. Because if you go in there, you will find a multitude of services, right? And a multitude of reports for these services. You can look at OneDrive, email, Teams, SharePoint. You can look at a lot of reports in here. Now, if you go into Teams, you can specifically get to this view where you can see the actual usage per person. So we can see the channel messages being sent by a specific person, the chat messages being sent, the one-on-one calls being sent by a specific person, and total meetings. The interesting thing, though, is that if you export this, let's see if I can show the export here, up there, you shall find yourself with the proud owner of a CSV file or an Excel file consisting of even more information and more tabs than this, more columns than these. You see, when you export it, you will see like how many meetings did this person organize, how many meetings did this person attend, and well, stuff like that, like ad hoc meetings, and a lot of good information basically. Now, before I continue, I do want to emphasize that we can obviously not see who these people are communicating to, which channel messages are being sent, or what they consist of. We can never go into that kind of detail with this information. We can only see aggregated data, right? So we can only see that this person have been sending this amount of chat messages for within this time. So very anonymous, but still very important. Now, with this like knowledge at our hand, we now have a bit of a less blurry image, if you will, right? We can now see the pieces a bit more separately, not just as a big chunk of information. We don't know that, oh, there's usage information. I wonder what that looks like. We actually know what it looks like. It's pretty anonymous, but still very individual, if you will. So we have it right now in front of our eyes, and this is actually both good and bad at the same time. On one hand, it becomes more clear on what we can actually do and what we can work with. On the other hand, it's a lot of information, and it might feel a bit like, oof, we're drowning in information while starving for wisdom, right? So yeah, it's a lot of information in this. What are we actually going to do with it? And let's see if I can go through here again. So it like in the Lego bricks, we in the Lego brick metaphor, we want to move into the next step, if you will, make wisdom out of the information. And in terms of Lego bricks, it feels kind of like this, right? We now have colors of our pieces. We can group them together. We can put them together in a way where they make sense. So now again, this is just what it feels like when I first present that there's the fact that we have loads of information created in Teams. We have nothing, we went to something. I've uncovered what it looks like, so it comes a bit more clearly. And now we want to bring colors into the game so we can build, beautiful houses, and we can tell that this piece would be a good wall and this would be a good lawn. And how to get from wisdom to from the raw data in the usage report? The answer is Power BI, of course. And you don't even have to build this stuff yourself, though even that's also a very lot of fun. You can actually just activate some stuff that is made for you automatically. And to do that, we're going to look into the Microsoft 365 Usage Analytics Report. Again,
before you jump into the usage analysis, a quick question from the chat. Yeah. Can you dive down into the individual in the Teams reports, in the Teams admin center?
Let's see. In the Teams admin center, you can go to the call quality dashboard, which kind of gives individual information. But I don't think you can get to the usage report from there. I think they are stored in, reports and usage. At least that's what I think.
Thank you.
Yep. But I can send a link to the usage reports for Teams, because at the end of the day, the links are the same regardless of who we are, right? And where we go. So the Microsoft 365 Usage Analytics report, you can actually get this from this QR code. Now I'm gonna stay here for a little short while and copy paste the link into the chat window as well, so that everyone gets it. Like that. It's on AppSource, which is kind of like a library where Microsoft is storing a lot of Power Apps and Power BI reports and visuals and stuff like that, so you can download it. And I think this is version 8 or something like that, so it's actually been out there for a while and been modified over time to basically improve. Now, to activate this, you do need to have Power BI, so you will be prompted to install it into your environment, and you do also need the report reader to get access to your tenants' information. That's also very important to remember, because you don't want every user to just activate this report and go bananas and look into all this individual stuff, right? But what does it look like? It looks something like this, right? We have a bunch of tabs on the left side, and we're ending up on the executive summary right here. On the left side here, we have a menu, so we can scroll through the executive summary. We can look at overview, licensing, product usage, and user activity, which holds individual information about how our users are actually spending their time using the services. And some of these tabs even have sub-tabs, so it's a large report. And I'm not going to go through everything, but we'll look at some golden nuggets here, shall we? On the executive overview, there's an overview of adoption at a super high level. It basically just tells us that 63.5% of our users who has a license was also utilizing it during last month. And in my case, I haven't updated this since 2020 for this image, so yeah, in that case, it was in December 2020, then we had 63.5% active users. Now, the reason I didn't change this picture is because I'm actually a bit proud of that number. You see, 63.5% of all the users being active is because 33 of our users that had, 33 users were active out of the 52 that also had a license, so they could be active. At this time, we were 26 employees, and that means we actually have like a user rate of 126% at this time. So it is actually pretty good, even if it looks super bad. Now, anyway, this KPI, it gives you a good idea on how well of an ROI you're getting from your investment. You're paying for all these licenses, so maybe make sure you're using them. 100% might be a little high, but I'd say strive for 85%. Maybe something like that. And there are actually 2 steps of getting there. One is to onboard your inactive users. The other is cleaning up the directory to not assign licenses where they are not needed. Now, let's say there will be some people on long-term leave and you have service accounts that needs licenses. So your baseline might not be 85% or 100%, but you have to find your own, right? You will have some inactive accounts, and that's okay. But you can also use this number when it's more up to date to show like proof of your progress, if you will, in your adoption campaigns towards your sponsors. And by the way, also something good to know, most of the information when it comes to these call-out values in this report, it goes through the last full calendar month. So this report is going to stay the same way for a full month. And then as you enter the next month, then you will see like the previous month and see how things have evolved. So you don't even have to stress and go into this report and be like, oh, I have to see it on a daily basis because I need to see if anything changed. Not that many things will change in like 1 month. So you'll be fine. Now, if we go back on the left side, we'll switch down to the overview instead, and we'll go back here. We'll see that we now have a bunch of sub tabs. So this report actually just grew and became much bigger. On the overview, we can see adoption, usage, communication, collaboration, storage, mobility. So these are like sections where you have focus on different areas of your adoption journey. And we are currently just on the overall adoption of Office 365. And we can also select a product to dive into one specific product. And the Office 365 product that I've selected right now, it's essentially merging all the other products together. So if you have a user active in OneDrive but not in anything else, and then you have another user active in Teams and nothing else, then both of them will be active Office 365 users, right? Now, in this, we have the same information as we had on the executive summary, except for one box here, the returning user number up here. And this is actually a good KPI of seeing how many people are new to your service, how many people come back and reuse the service over and over, month after month. And I'm going to show you, if we go down here, we can actually see it. There we go. By month, by full month. So each month passing backwards, we can see enabled users, which means how many people actually have a license to do anything in the environment. How many people are active out of those people having a license? How many people was returning month after month? And that also gives us how many people were their first time users. They've never used any services before. Now they've started to use it. And so this gives us kind of like an indication on, is it the same people that just use our services more and more as we drive our adoption campaigns, or are there new users added on top starting to use the services? So like as an example, let's say you are driving the adoption campaign of having people conduct more Teams meetings, right? And use the channel chat much more. And you can see in the activity numbers that meetings are on the rise and people are chatting a lot. So there's a lot going on activity-wise. But you can also in this view see that there's not that many first-time users. Basically what we're seeing then is the same users who already knew how to book meetings and send channel messages are just doing that to a higher extent than they were before. And if that was the goal of your onboarding campaign, to have the low usage users utilize the features more, then you have succeeded. But if you wanted to onboard new users onto the services, then maybe we should look into a different strategy for this onboarding campaign. So that's a very, very good tab. Now let's head up back here, adoption, usage, communication, and we'll swap over to mobility, which I actually see now is over here rather than there. And mobility has a very neat ribbon chart. I love the ribbon chart because it's a Power BI visualization where you rank different things over an axis. In this case, it's over the months. So this will actually show you which device is most commonly used to access Microsoft Teams, right? Now, let's consider this API when laying out our adoption plan. Let's see if we look into this and we find that more users than we initially thought is actually using Teams by a client we haven't focused on before. Perhaps there's a lot of iOS users, but we're focusing our efforts on those with an Android, or even simply the Windows client or web client. We didn't even consider the mobile client at first, maybe. Now, using this insight, you can, for example, make guides and news and direct that to the users based on their preferred clients, instead of just here's how you access Teams on your mobile phone. Instead, we actually know that a large majority of our users is using Android. And so when there's news regarding Android and Teams, then we can kind of push that information towards those users and not just spam the iOS users with information that at the end of the day, they don't really have any need for. So another way you can use this KPI is to measure your success when, for example, driving adoption for a specific platform. So let's say for example, that your users, they're tired of carrying their computers back and forth all the time. When they leave the office, they don't want to bring the computer to their home. In these days, I would say maybe it's like the other way around. When you leave the home office, you don't want to bring your computer to work. But Anyhow, let's say you somehow end up Teamsless, right? You don't have a computer or work computer in this sense. It doesn't have Teams installed, but you need to get into Microsoft Teams. So you can use this metrics, see that barely anyone is using the web client, drive an adoption campaign towards, telling people that Teams is accessible using teams.microsoft.com. You don't even need your work computer. You can access Teams anywhere in the world just going to teams.microsoft.com and log in with your credentials, given, of course, some conditional access rules depending on your organization. But you can start there. You can drive this adoption campaign, if you will, and you can use this metric to see if it had any effect. Like, are the web browser now going on a rise? Are people actually using the web browser more than they did before? Now, I've selected the product usage view as well, and just wanted to give you a golden nugget from the report from here as well before we move on. Now, the product usage and the Teams tab, in here we can get insight on kind of what I mentioned before, the amount of people doing something and the amount of activity done by those people. So if you look like here, somewhere on this chat messages board, you can see that in June and July, we had a drop of activity count. So a lot fewer chat messages was being sent out. But if we look here, the same amount of active users were actually using Teams at some point during that month, over like all the time, but the activity rate dropped. Now, in our case, this means that we were basically on vacation, because in Sweden it's vacation time in June and July. So that would explain the drop. But let's say instead, if we started the adoption journey at this point, and we can see now that there's a lot of people who are using Teams, like all of them, but if the activity is going on a rise, then that means that they are actually using it more than before. So just if you send one message, then you are an active user. You're not just a very active user, but by this definition, you're an active user. So this is like a good way of seeing the ratio as well on how many activities per user are we actually having here, and are we a lot of people using it a little, or a few people using it a lot? And this can help you a lot with the onboarding campaigns, again, filling up the gap, seeing where on this gap are your users at this time.
We got the question in the chat. What is the definition of active users?
Right.
Should it be returning users and plus first-time users, something like that?
Yeah. So the active user count in this sense, on this page, it's just the amount of unique people that have performed an action by themselves. So in Teams terms, that would be, or say, let's say in Outlook, we have here we have Exchange up here, which is basically email, super boring stuff, and I know, old stuff, but it's a good example for this case, because in terms of Exchange, we know how many emails you received, how many emails you read, and how many emails you sent. We have no idea to whom and what they consist of, but those are the three things we know. Two of them are active things that you need to perform as a user. You can send emails and you can read emails, and you have to do that yourself. You don't have to do anything to receive an email. So if you have any activity during this period of time, like in May, for example, if you read an email, if you sent an email, then you are by definition an active user in that month, because you've done something. So in a sense, the threshold is kind of low, right? You might still have users in here, debatable if they are very active, right? Which is why it's also so good to go back to the exports of the lists, because then we can actually look more into depth, like how many people sent at least 5 emails, and how many people did at least attend 10 meetings in Teams and also did this and also did that, and like how many people did use at least once every feature of Microsoft Teams, not just a few of them. So we can be much more specific when we try to look at the behavior of users. Did that answer the question? I'm going to go with yes for now.
Yeah. No.
It
The
did
answer
not.
is no.
The answer is no. We did not answer the question. Yeah.
I got already another question to discuss afterwards in the Q&A area. Linda, it's okay to put it in a Q&A, and then maybe we can unmute yourself to explain what you're looking for.
We'll circle back to it later. I'm just going to go super quickly into the productivity score. Just mention that it exists basically before we move on to the next topic, because I also see my time is kind of running out. Okay, so in here, in the productivity score, you basically get points in your tenant based on how you are using the services at your hand. And you can see up here that we can get 800 points in total, and that I'm currently at 549 points. And I've selected teamwork just to show you that 92% of my organization is utilizing teamwork, which is good. But basically you can drill down into all of these blocks, and you can click on them to get more information. Usually they are on a 28 day period, so they look back 28 days from today and look at how users are utilizing the services. So this is a bit more operative in terms of your metrics. But for example, behind this communication, and I don't have an image of that unfortunately, but I can tell you, and you can go into this and look into your own environment. So behind communication, you will, for example, see the @mention metric, and the @mention metric it's going to show how many emails, not who they were sent to or even by who, but how many emails were sent out using an @mention inside of that email. Okay, and then it's going to show you all the emails that went out without an @mention in the email. And finally, it's going to show how many of those mails that were sent out also got a response within the 28-day period. And usually, now, very, very usually, you will have a better chance of getting a response if you @mention someone inside an email, because it's much clearer, like, what is this? What does this have to do with me? How is this directed to me? And so that's what we want to show. And you can use this metric to basically like prove that you do get better responses if you use the @mention inside an email. If you're a loner and you just like to send out emails for the fun of it, you have no intention of getting replies from people, then skip this feature. But if you do, like most people, you have some kind of responsive purpose to your emails, then using the @mention feature is actually increasing your odds of getting a response. Now, the good thing about this, like driving the campaign of using the @mention within email, is that, I don't know, perhaps this reminds you of another product where messaging occurs in the same way, and you also kind of mention people to drive engagement. So what I'm saying is that sometimes one feature in one service can actually help you drive the adoption of another service. So I'm not going to go super deep into the productivity score anymore than this. I'll just let it be here for you to explore it yourself, but do feel free to come with any kind of questions to me after the session. But we have left out a very important stage. What about me, right? All I've been talking about so far has been from an admin perspective, like how can the adoption team drive adoption throughout the organization? But what about me? What can I do? I want to see metrics as well. I'm just a mere mortal, but I can't get the reports reader all, and I still want information. Now, there is good news. There is a report that you can activate within Microsoft Teams in the Power BI app. So on the left side, over there on the menu, you see that I have gone into the Power BI app in Teams, which you will find under the 3 dots if you don't already, have it available, and if you for some reason haven't installed it, install it. You'll find it under apps. The first thing that you will find when you open the Power BI app in Teams is this home page, and you can see under recommended, like here, there is a report with a Teams logo called Teams Activity Analytics. Now, if you click this, it's going to install the report in your own workspace in Power BI. It's going to download the data for you, and you are the only one who can see this report. So it's your personalized report. If you have a Power BI Pro license, you can schedulely update this report as well. So it just keeps bringing more information to you. Now, this report consists of 3 tabs, and they look like this. I'm gonna bring up the pointer to show you. Here, I have my activity, and team activity details. And on my activity, I have, my own summary of audio, video minutes, and much more. Like I can see how many meetings I attended, how many calls did I attend, how much time did I spend using audio, and this is in the last 31 days, right? And it's safe to assume that if you have audio on in a meeting, you were basically in a meeting, right? So this means that you can find the ratio for how much time of your meeting are you spending with video on. And consider this, like, are you happy with this ratio or do you want to do something about it? So I'm personally not that thrilled of having just above half of my meeting time with video on. Honestly, those are rookie numbers and I've got to pump those up, right? So I need to tell myself that I don't just need to use video when I present myself and tell people what my name is and like, this is what I look like. So now I'm turning off my video. It's actually very, very good to have video on when you present and when you are listening to people presenting, because that gives them a chance of of seeing your reactions and see how you respond to the things that they're saying, like you would do in a physical meeting. Now, anyhow, this is just the My Activity tab. If we quickly move over to the Team Activity tab, we get this overview of all the teams that I am a part of, right? And some good information about them. So let's see where I was. Completely missed out here. Here, right, sorry. So it shows the team's activity information, all the teams that you are part of. And as we can see, all the teams are in here with a bunch of columns, which gives us a neat overview of like which teams do I want to be part of still, and which teams have maybe become, obsolete and outdated. Nothing is happening in them anymore. Maybe I should bring them out of my teams list because they don't really make sense to have anymore. Now I'm going to go through like one of the teams, just column by column, to explain what you actually see with this information. I'm choosing the taco team. The rules of this team is very simple. So each time an employee at XOB, which is the new name for Altitude 365 and uClarity, we just merged into XOB. Every time an XOB employee eats a taco, they take a picture of their meal and they post it as a new channel message in this team. Now all the other members swiftly becomes aware of this important news, which triggers them to send loving emojis and plan their own next taco eating session as soon as possible. So first of all, we can see that there are 4 new posts and replies in the last 7 days. I can also see that this team has 23 active users and 14 guests. And since it has guests, I might be a bit precautious when it comes to sharing secret taco recipes in this team. Information might be leaking into the wrong hands here. So that's something you can use this column for. I can also see that there are a few active channels in this team. I might only show 1 or 2 of them in my team's list. So this information is useful because it tells me stuff is going on that I might not be aware of. And I might want to activate another channel or show another channel in this team as well. The total posts and replies gives me a good reference number as opposed to the last 7 days. In total, in this is 90 days, there have been 32 posts and 32 replies in this team. And we have had 0 meetings organized within this team. Now, the days without active users and the days without posts or reply actually refers to the last 90 days. So out of the 90 days that the report hold data, this is the amount of days that nobody posted anything and nobody were active in this team at all. So it gives us like an idea that on the last 90 days, 41 days were without tacos, right? And we can also determine that we eat tacos, right, like every other day in this company. Now, if we go deeper, we can go to the team's detail tab, the last one over here, and we can select just one team and go into deeper the details and analysis of one specific team. So in here, I can actually get a summary of this information that I just told you, but I can also see that on the 29th of January, we seem to have been eating 11 tacos at the same day, which is very, very impressive and very good. We should keep those numbers up. So using this report, you can actually drag your own adoption as well. You don't have to just sit and wait for your admin to push information to you. You can see how you are impacting your community and your organization as well, and remove teams that you don't want to be part of. So in summary, look into the reports reader row, look into the Microsoft usage report in the admin center. If you haven't already enabled it, you have to enable it first, but it is under the usage reports. And educate your users for self-improvement using Teams. They can actually use their own personal Teams report and find a lot of usage data in there. If you haven't already, download Power BI Desktop. It's in Microsoft Store and it's free. You actually heard me right there. It doesn't cost anything to build reports in Power BI, and you can install Power BI Desktop, which is the program that you are building the kind of reports that we saw with Microsoft usage activity. Those reports you can build yourself for free if you want to. Now, if you don't want usage data in Excel files, which you export manually from the usage tab, then all this data is actually available on the Graph API as well, which actually has an advantage because in here you can download data for specific days and you can store data that Microsoft doesn't. Like they store information for 30 days back, day by day, but then you can get aggregations of 90 days or 180 days, but then it's lost. So if you want to keep more data than that, you have to store it yourself. And then the Graph API might be a good idea, a good place for that. And of course, yeah, if you're interested in more regarding Power BI, please do visit my blog and send me a comment if you have any kind of improvements that you see that I should be making. And of course, rate my session and look at all the other sessions in this, of course, room. Don't leave this room. This is the best room of all. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you, Michael, for moderating this. And let's jump over to some FAQ.